Hello viewers, I am Kamruzzaman. Welcome back to my new lesson. Today I am going to talk about how to identify different type of clauses. This is very important because sometimes some students are very much confused of identifying different type of clauses. Sometimes they are very much confused to identify subordinate clause or principal clause. So, with this end in view, today I am going to discuss how to identify different type of clauses, especially how to identify subordinate clauses. So, dear students, have a look on the board how to identify subordinate clauses. Okay? So, look at the examples. Number 1, I know the man who came here yesterday. I know the man who came here yesterday. Here I know the man, it is a principal clause. Who came here yesterday, it is a subordinate clause. This is the book, it is a principal clause, which I bought yesterday, it is a subordinate clause. We returned home, it is a principal clause, and when the sun set, it is a subordinate clause. And example number 4, I shall go, it is a principal clause, and if you come, it is a subordinate clause. If you come, it is a subordinate clause. I repeat, example number 1, I know the man, it is a principal clause. Who came here yesterday, it is a subordinate clause. Example number 2, this is the book, it is a principal clause, which I bought yesterday, it is a subordinate clause. Example number 3, we returned home, it is a principal clause, when the sun set, it is a subordinate clause. Example number 4, I shall go, it is a principal clause, if you come, it is a subordinate clause. So, we know the principal clause actually does not depend on any other clause to express its meaning. So, I know the man, it is a principal clause, who came here yesterday, it is a subordinate clause, because this clause actually depends on this principal clause to express its meaning. Similarly, this is the book, it is a principal clause, because this clause does not depend on any other clause to express its meaning. But which I bought yesterday, this clause depends upon this clause, this principal clause to express its meaning. Similarly, example number 3, we returned home, this clause is a principal clause, because this clause does not depend on any other clause to express its meaning. But when the sun set, this is a subordinate clause, because this clause depends upon this principal clause to express its meaning. And example number 4, I shall go if you come. Here I shall go is a principal clause, because this clause does not depend on any other clause to express its meaning, but if you come, it is a subordinate clause because this clause depends upon this principal clause to express its meaning. But we can identify subordinate clause by seeing many other subordinating conjunction like who, which, when, if, etc. So, we can identify subordinate clause by seeing many subordinating conjunction like who, which, when, if, and there are many subordinating conjunction, and the subordinate clause actually begins with subordinating conjunction. The subordinate clause actually begins with subordinating conjunction. This subordinate clause actually begins with this subordinating conjunction. This subordinate clause actually begins with this subordinating conjunction. So, every subordinate clause begins with a subordinating conjunction. So, by seeing the subordinating conjunction, we can identify the subordinate clause. There are many subordinating conjunction, like I would like to write down some subordinating conjunction, right. There are many subordinating conjunction. I would like to write down some subordinating conjunction. Suppose if, when, who, which, that, what, where, till, until, then before, after, since, so, etc. So, there are many subordinating conjunction like if, when, who is, that, what, where, till, until, before, after, since, so. We can also write down who, since, sorry, not so, but since as, because, then who, etc. So, there are many subordinating conjunction like if, when, who is, that, what, where, till, until, before, after, since, as, because, who. You can also write down unless, right. You can also write down unless, etc. So, there are many subordinating conjunction like if, when, who is, that, what, where, till, until, before, after, since, as, because, who, unless, etc. So, by seeing this subordinating conjunction, we can identify subordinate clauses. So, dear students, I think from now you can identify many kind of subordinate clauses. So, thank you very much. Thank you everybody. Take care.